Welcome to Mystics MMOs. I'm your host, Mystic Raven. So, love it. You get a lot of good information if you're an MMOer, right? You just get a lot of good information. And of course, you get the updated news feeds. And this was on my news feed email. And I hadn't gotten to check it out the day it released, but I wanted to cover this video because this is probably the best friggin' video that sums up ESO and Final Fantasy. And I'm going to give you guys. I'm going to play it. I left the link in the description below. The content creator is called The Hive Leader. I recommend every goddamn person to go watch this video and give a thumbs up because it's amazing. It's an amazing video. Simply stunning, to say the least. And I was like, and I want to hit the points that this person brings up is why I want to do this video. I want to highlight the points that he is making, like in the differences between Final Fantasy and ESO. And it's like ESO, Final Fantasy Shadowbringers, or ESO elsewhere. Or because they're pretty close proximity, the launch dates. And a couple people, and I will get into the comments, and somebody was just like, why not both? Because not everybody can afford $60 within that time frame. Like some people, that's $120, or want to get a collector's edition. Not everybody, or even invest time. Not everybody has that much time. So it literally is for some players, it is or. Which one? Is it Final Fantasy XIV or elsewhere? And why? What's the pros and the strengths between both games? And that's why I suggest you guys go check out this video. I do make this recommendation wholeheartedly that you guys go check this out. Now, I do also have my chat up, but I have to... So we'll get into it. I love this video. He's crying, I'm laughing. Like, yeah, it's true.
Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers and the Elder Scrolls Online, random letters that may or may not make a word, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced elsewhere, are coming out this summer within a few weeks of each other. And since we gamers are a frugal people, I have had several people come to me saying, if I can't buy both, which one should I buy? Or which game should I start playing now so I'm ready for the expansion?
What do I do?
You're asking me? Why? I don't f***ing know anything.
I do.
But I have been playing both of these games over the past few weeks, preparing for the fact that I will inevitably have to cover these expansions. I do this to myself. So I've been alternating days between the two. One day in ESO, the next in 14, then back to ESO, and then back to 14, and so on. Which is kind of a mind because other than the fact that both of these are story-heavy MMOs, they are polar opposites in every other way.
Okay, let's stop it right there. I totally agree with this comment. It is complete opposites, They're both, like I've said, they're both fruit, and I've said this in the past. They're both fruit. One's just an apple, the other one's an orange. You're going to get a different experience by eating both of them. Yeah, they're both good for you. Well, that's debatable. They're both good. You're going to get a different experience, by consuming either or both. So, I agree. Continue.
Now, I'm not here to say which one is better. I am not
I will. I'll give pros and cons, and I will. He might not have the qualifications. I do. Continue.
Qualified for that. Hell, I'm barely qualified to have a YouTube channel, and they let literally anyone have those.
Hello.
No, what I want to do is talk about my experiences over the past few weeks with each game, because on a serious note, I think it'll provide a good insight into the philosophy of how these games function, and how two completely different approaches can yield a successful MMO. On a less serious note, I'm doing it because I spent all my time playing these games, and if I don't talk about them, then I don't have anything to f***ing talk about. So Final Fantasy XIV. I'll start here because this is the MMO I had the most preparing to do in. See, when I said Final Fantasy XIV is a story-heavy game, that was a f***ing understatement. The game releases a ton of main...
Just a tad. It's all story-driven.
Story quest with each expansion, and even more added through patches in between. That's a lot of nodding.
Right, Kel? A lot of nodding.
And before you begin playing those nice new expansions and start seeing all that nice new content, you're gonna need to complete all of the MSQs you haven't done yet. So if you're someone like me who doesn't play 14 on the reg, well, you're gonna have some catching up to do. I knew this going in, so I immediately got started questing. Unfortunately for me, after a few quests, I hit a mandatory raid that required me to have a certain gear score before I could enter, which meant I needed to grind out some dungeons and raids for currency so I could get some better gear. Which is great, because that's what I like doing in Final Fantasy XIV anyway. I have always found 14 to shine in its dungeons and raids, particularly because...
And it does. I will be honest with you guys. I was hesitant because of the story-driven, how story-driven it was. But where this game shines is literally where the dungeons and raids are. Like, it's amazing. Like, the graphics, the eye candy, mechanics. Though I wish the mechanics would be a little... Like, there are hard and extreme... So I guess I can't say anything, but sometimes you want to push your bounds a little bit. There is challenging content out there, so but it just shines here.
Because the classes are so well designed. While grouping up, the classes truly come into their own as you get to use everything you have available to you. So the best way to get the currency I needed was through dungeon roulettes. However, I couldn't do the level 70 dungeon roulette, which would provide me with the most currency I needed for the time I'd put in. I'd either have to do the lower level roulettes, which would take longer, or I would need to complete the 3 new dungeons 14 has introduced since I last played. Knowing I'd probably need to do those at some point, I figured I might as well do those. And hey, cool, they added new dungeons to the game, that's awesome! But you can't simply do a new dungeon in Final Fantasy XIV. No. You've got to...
I love it. You just can't simply just pop into a dungeon and say I've unlocked it. No. No.
Lock these dungeons through more quests!
Yes!
Now this isn't a bad thing. I'm just letting you know. If you're thinking of getting back into Final Fantasy XIV, you're going to be doing a lot of questing. Even if you don't really want to.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
That's very much how 14 works. I'm a dungeon type of guy. If I had the choice in any MMO, I'd fully level up doing dungeons, or possibly exploring, but we're not talking about that right now. I find questing to be a bit boring in just about any MMO nowadays.
And see, this is another thing. Like, I'm going to say this. There's a difference between story-driven content, right, that players get to experience the lore or the story, and then fetch questing. And that's why people don't like questing, because fetch questing just sucks. Okay, moving forward.
And I have never found the questing to be a very strong part of 14. The story? Yes.
See? Story, yes. Fetch questing, no.
The quests that are designed around the story, not so much. So I found preparing for the expansions to be somewhat of a slog. To finish the quest, you'll probably also need to do some gear grinding, which will then be nullified the moment Shadowbringers releases. Again, not a bad thing. I only mention it because Final Fantasy XIV is very much what I think of as a standard MMO when it comes to expansions. A new storyline, a new class, a new race, new skills, basic gear drops that will immediately replace everything you've worked so hard for to get over the...
Not immediately. That's what I do like. The one thing I will say about this, the gear that you obtained, if you get your best in slot, it will last you like 3 or 4 levels. But he's right. It's typically a standard setup. A new level cap, new gear cap, so on and so forth, and you just rinse and repeat. But I do like the fact that it's not like World of Warcraft where a green is replacing my epic fucking gear. Oh my god. I hated that. Hated it. Just wanted to curl. Going on.
Past year or two. And of course, a new continent full of quests meant to walk you step by step toward the newly increased level cap. And then it starts all over again.
Yay.
And then there's Elder Scrolls Online, which is completely different. The game's entire approach to, well, anything, can be summed up as, whatever.
This is it! This is right! Right here! I have to stop. This sums it up. This completely, he hit every point. This is why I'm giving it up. You guys got to go check out this video, because he hits the nail right on the head. He hits the nail on the head. That when you're playing Elder Scrolls Online, And when you get to a certain point in the game, you're like, whatever. I mean, do I want to go do that new trial? Why? Do I want to get that new weapon? Why? You know, it's just it becomes the question of like, why? That's the mentality. That's the mentality. Then you do it, and then what's left? Wait for the new trial and PvP. Okay. Wait for the new trial, PvP. Okay. Now, I know how to rectify these situations, but once again, I don't work for Cinemax Online Studio. So, good luck. Anyways, moving forward.
There is no catching up, which leaves me without a lot to say about my recent time in ESO. You don't need to do anything before starting elsewhere. You don't need to own Morrowind or Somerset. You don't need to do quest or gear grinding. Hell, you don't even need to have played the game before, due to the level scaling in Elder Scrolls.
You don't need to play the game. I'm sorry, I had to throw that out there.
You can hop right in and start doing elsewhere content at level 1. That's pretty much the selling point of the game. It's all about the adventures that you make for yourself.
Which is good. It's great. That's why it's one of my favorite MMOs. So heads up, I'm not bagging on it. It is one of my favorites. And he even says that in this video. Moving on.
Do whatever you want, whenever you want. Or don't.
Or don't.
Whatever. You don't even need the expansion to hit endgame or to be competitive. So unless you just want the new Necromancer class or a new area to explore, whatever.
Right?
I can see this as a bit of a detriment because the questions...
I do too. I agree. I love this guy. I love him. I'm hitting sub now. I'm subscribing right now.
Suddenly changes from, should I buy this? To, why should
I buy this?
That why is very important.
It is very important.
Without a set path to follow in ESO, I've often heard people say, well, I don't really see a reason to log in right now. Or, I'll get to it eventually. Leading to them just never logging in. There's not really a goal per se, it's just more ESO to explore and experience. And again, that's not bad. I love ESO. It's my favorite MMO.
See? It's his favorite MMO. I agree, it's one of my favorite MMOs. It kept me the longest. And there's a lot of pros to the game. It's stuff.
But as an example, I've never completed Morrowind because I just haven't felt the need to. With a game that allows players to make their own path and doesn't provide them with a set goal, sometimes players get a bit lost and even lose motivation. I can't stress enough that I'm not trying to say either approach is bad. You really can't argue with the fact that they're working as a whole. You're a Pokemon to them, and they gotta catch 'em all. Personally, I see myself as a Snorlax. Or a Lickitung. Ladies and gentlemen.
I am definitely... I don't even know the Pokemon. I think I'm like the dragon one, like a Charmander or whatever. I'm definitely temperamental. So I'm one to, like, very temperamental. Uncontrollable. Moving on.
In my eyes, ESO is the definition of casual friendly.
Casual friendly. I agree. This is, like I said, the best goddamn video that sums it up.
No need to catch up or anything.
Yep,
it doesn't matter if you take some time off from the game, you just do whatever you want whenever you want.
Absolutely.
Final Fantasy XIV is far more planned and laid out, and provides definitive character progression. They want you to experience their story and their world in their way. And neither one is wrong. It's just two very different ways of presenting content. This could even be seen as Western versus Eastern design concepts, which would be something fun to explore sometime in the future with some other games, I don't know. So yeah, what should you take away from this video? Do whatever you want, I don't fucking care.
He doesn't care. And I'll get into the comments. And was reading through and I did see Kel's comment. By the way, good comment, Kel. Somebody, said, why aren't you talking about WoW Classic? Because this is not, this is, about the expansions between the two. So let's get into this, and I'll cover this. Watching this made me think like this. Final Fantasy XIV is like your MMO dad who says, now son, to grow up successful, you need to go do this and this and this. And ESO is like your mom, your MMO mom, who says, it's okay, son, do whatever you want. I will still love you. So your father's like saying, you need to follow this path to be successful. And ESO is the mom saying, do whatever you want. Whatever. Wow, this game's a lot. ESO was my main, but Final Fantasy XIV has been my main for a while. Both games are good, but Final Fantasy XIV is my favorite hands down. So Final Fantasy XIV is this player's favorite. Everybody's going to have their preference, so there's no debate here. If you like Elder Scrolls, it's a good game, solid game. There are issues, right? And this is once again what I point out. Final Fantasy XIV all the way, for all the souls lost in its world. So make your story. Final Fantasy XIV, experience your story. Very different approaches. Personally, I think Square Enix are much better at making stories than I am, so I stick to Final Fantasy XIV. I wouldn't have the time necessary to actually dedicate myself to Final Fantasy XIV, but since I dedicate my own rhythm on ESO, I've been loving it so far. And that's one of the attractions to Elder Scrolls. You play at your own pace, you're not directed, you're not limited. So that is one of the core elements that makes Elder Scrolls, the way they've done incentives isn't viable, right, in a long-term sense. So something has to be done. Once again, I know how to do it, but okay, we're reconnected. Sorry for the both, on both sides. I don't think anything was toxic in any of the comments. Everything highlights the strengths of each game, which both games have. But it sums it up. It really sums it up why they're different. First, the combats are different. The experience is different. They're both MMOs, but it's a completely different experience altogether. Elder Scrolls is a great game. It's one of my favorites, and they got they're upgrading servers. There's a lot of things to look forward to moving forward for ZeniMax Online Studio. They're also developing a new MMO. There's a lot of really cool things, and I would never say that the devs don't do a great job, because they do. They go above and beyond. There are just problems. There are little things that you have to take a look at. You have to be able to dissect, and you got to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge it. I feel the direction they're going in, it kind of is going to keep to that Elder Scrolls and still present more lore. But I love the lore in Elder Scrolls. I love how it's almost like you can go through these tomes, and there's like Easter eggs all throughout Tamriel. All throughout, there's a bunch of Easter eggs. So if you're an Elder Scrolls lore junkie, you get so many Easter eggs in ESO. So many. So that to me was the compelling part. Like, it's how you appreciate the content and how the content's delivered. But when it comes to, keeping people's attention, in this genre, that's a little bit more tricky. That's a little bit more finesse. There's an art to it, if you would. It's not as simple as just pushing out content. It's just not that simple. It's not. I wish it was, but it isn't. But that's where they got these little fetch quests in between the main storyline. So the story's good, but it's the little things that it's eating up your time and your patience. Any game. So I will say this. So I recommend checking this out. If you guys haven't subscribed to this dude, he is witty, funny, direct. I've never seen this content creator prior to this. But I love him automatically. I love his approach, his insight. It was an amazing video. Hands down, one of the best videos that pretty much sums it all up. And I'm not going to try to discourage anybody from doing what they want to do. Do what you like. Do what you want. But keep in mind, like he said, they're complete opposite of each other. They have a complete different experience. And there are pros and cons to both. Like Elder Scrolls, in my opinion, has the better PvP setup than Final Fantasy XIV. It does. I'm not talking about like the glitches and the technical problems. Let's just pull that off to the side. And and I get that. Like, and I did want to read Kel's. Kel did leave a post, and I think his is relative as well, because he's a content creator, and I definitely want to get into this. I went through reading a ton of stuff, and I really loved everybody's opinions. And there, it's just, nobody's fighting. Everybody's just kind of pointing it out. Like, yes, this is good. I love this. I love that. This not so much. Nothing was toxic. Was a very well, even organized community effort to address these issues. So it's amazing. Very, very good. But I have to read Kel's Irish Mage. This is my boy here. Okay. Now, of course, I liked his because I loved his explanation. I play both ESO and Final Fantasy XIV, though I've been playing far more Final Fantasy XIV for the last 2 months. Both are great games. What it comes down to for me is performance. ESO is buggy and laggy, especially in Cyrodiil. Things can simply not work. Bash, break free, stare, stun, immunity, getting stuck in roll dodge, and the most bothersome, sometimes your skills just don't work. You'll push the button, the cost is taken, but nothing happens. I've never had any issues with Final Fantasy XIV. No lag, no signs of abilities not working, and if there is an issue, it usually gets fixed in hours. ESO waits until major patch fixes, and that can take as long as 3 weeks. It's sad too, because ESO has some of the best combat. It's fast paced and fun. If only it would work on a consistent basis. I agree. Totally. Totally. I absolutely agree. And of course, somebody put a reply. I didn't reply. 3 weeks, more like 3 months. Even then, it's probably not fixed. It's like there are issues, right? There are. We can't deny it. We can't hide behind it. But every game has some issues. But what's priority? What is the priority? And once again, I say this as like a loving parent, not as, a demeaning person. Elder Scrolls is one of my favorites, but you have to like you pull in people. You pull in your top dudes for this. Not your top developers, your top gamers. You get some insight, but don't anticipate them, not everybody, to have an answer. But when the community will help guide the developers in the direction that they want to see, that's part of retention. All right, it's part of it. So, yeah. But I think both expansions will do well, or in Elder Scrolls case, chapter. I think they'll both do well. They'll be both great content. Both teams will continue to prosper in the future, and I hope they both do so. And I really hope for Elder Scrolls that performance does become better, things do improve, because it's a game worthy. It has the fundamentals. So, yeah, there you guys have it. Once again, I'm Mystic Raven. This is Mystic's MMOs. As always, thank you guys. Have a nice day.